Welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor, and this is a second part of working with mood and color, where we're using the properties of color to affect a mood. And again, I'm using the motif that I've been using over the past weeks, Trinity Church, at a very specific time of day, with a very specific lighting condition where the sun is fading, it's going down, and the warmth of the sun can be felt on the buildings. We even see some glare in the windows, which I'm going to try to capture. And I start by thinking about this tonally, light and dark, and how to create this image through lights and darks. I'm using a sepia watercolor, single color, going from strong mid-tones in the buildings, a bit of light in the sky, and some strong darks, pure paint in the bottom of the painting. And this sketch has really motivated me to go forward with a color rendition. And I'm going to play on some of the warm tones that I observed in walking by Trinity Church at this time of day, where the strong low light is almost glowing, a type of orangish sienna hue on the buildings, and a bit of glare in the windows, as you can see, some cooler notes in the sky and in the shadows below, but overall very warm painting. And we're going to be using some of the techniques that we practiced in an earlier video, layering colors, and we'll be starting with an underpainting to evoke this time of day and the light that we see on Trinity Church. In this painting, I'm trying to capture those windows, the glare on the windows, and so those bits of yellow that you see there are kind of isolating that area, and I was using a bit of dry brush to take advantage of the rough paper, and in doing so created some shiny areas in the painting with the left paper. And what follows is a lot of cad orange red, now some alizarin crimson into the lower part of the painting, leaving some breaks in the painting, thinking about where cars and reflections might be, and the street, just giving a very warm, juicy underpainting, with the focus on a few lights in the upper building and a few lights in the shadows below. Whether those remain or not, I'm not sure. So my strategy here is I'm using basically complementary hues in the form of blues, reds, and yellows, and we'll get a lot of violets in the resulting painting. But this is another important strategy for any visual artist, is to think about complementary hues. And what I mean by that are, if you've seen a color wheel and they're readily available, you can search for one and you'll see that it's an arrangement on a circle of the primary hues, the secondary hues, and the tertiary hues, the combinations. And what we mean by complementary in terms of the at least the color wheel is the colors that are on the opposite side of the wheel, and those colors tend to work well together. They tend to amplify each other, make each other stronger. Thus we use the term complementary, because they really work together very well. So if you look at the color wheel, you'll see violet and yellow are complementary hues, and violet is not a primary, it's a secondary color, meaning it's mixed from two colors, which are blue and red. So we're using a lot of blue and red and a little bit of yellow in the windows, and we're hoping to make some violets and broken blues and reds that help to make that yellow really shine in the end result. Also, we'll be using some sienna to give local color, but it's more an exercise, I feel, in complementary hues and in lights and darks to really establish this glaring light off of the Trinity Church. So what I'm doing now is shaping the church and the surrounding buildings, and giving I like the spires that rise up and the shapes that they create. So I'm conscious of that and trying to execute that with some stronger siennas. And sienna is in the warm family. It's got a lot of red to it, so it works very well with the palette we've used so far. Typically in my paintings I'll use 4 or 5 colors at the most. Seldom do I venture beyond 3. And I find this simplification is good for a number of reasons. One, it keeps me thoughtful of that mother color. Second, it keeps me working with complementary hues. And third, it really limits my choices, so I'm not trying to match colors too much. I'm pretty much working with a few colors, varying their intensities, varying the mixtures so that I get variety. And the result is often more striking than the original image. This is because I can really concentrate on color relationships and tonal relationships as I'm painting, and not be distracted by trying to follow the subject too much. So now I'm been working on dry paper and building up the shadows as they move to the lower section of the painting. It's a little tedious process because I'm unsure how much of the structure I want to reveal and how much I want to put into shadow. My guess is I'll put most of this into shadow and forego any of the details that we can observe on the bottom, and make it really about the light that's shining on the upper part of the building. The colors that I'm using in this painting are the alizarin crimson, which I mentioned, ultramarine blue in the sky and now in the shadows, and some yellow ochre and a little bit of cad orange red in the underpainting. And I'm hoping to take advantage of this this gray wash that I'm using now, this violet wash, to take advantage of that underpainting, that strong red that you saw in the beginning. I would like that to kind of permeate the whole scene. Thus, we put that on very heavily to begin with, and this gray that's following is a very strong gray, so hopefully they counter each other and balance each other in the final painting. Working on the lower ground, creating a feeling of the planes that we can see in the shadows, the planes of the lawn, the street, the walkway, and also the vertical plane of the bus and the 2 cars coming towards us. So I'm kind of tying it together. You notice that it's almost an extension of that deep violet, warm violet hue that's up above. And then gradually I'll minimize the whites. Keep the whites working in the upper part, leave a few accents below, but in general put this lower section into shadow. And I know that as it dries, it's going to look different. It's going to lighten a bit. The way it looks now, it's hard to perceive much going on in the lower section of the painting, but we see enough to kind of give us a reference. And while that's drying, I'll work up above and put some finality to the window shapes, to the towers, to any shadows that are being cast, any decorative elements in the church itself, but not overly much. I feel the painting as it is now is going to remain pretty much until the end. We won't see much real change. We'll see some sharpening of elements and some details, but I don't think the real essence of the painting is going to change much beyond this. And kind of funny because the painting almost feels like it has, like the windows are glaring. So that part was successful. The dry brush keeping the windows a little bit vague around the edges, using the white of the paper, and certainly most important is the strong warms and cools that surround the windows. For you to feel that sort of glare, sort of brilliance on the glass, the strong darks and strong warm tones I feel were absolutely necessary, and gone well beyond what that original photo looked like. Now we almost have a different light in one sense, because it's gotten so warm and so rich. And the cools below too are providing a good counter. This is another good strategy as you're building your painting, is to, if you're going to have a dominant hue, the reds that kind of dominate this painting, you need to counter it here and there with some complementary colors. I'm choosing blue to counter the reds and the yellows, but it could be another cool color as well. As I work on this painting, all my memories of Trinity Church are helping me. I've been looking at it for over 40 years now and working with it as a motif for many of those years. So it's and it never fails to inspire me. Not just the church, but the surrounding area, and seeing it in inclement weather, seeing it with different seasons. I feel like I know this church very well and enjoy to pass by almost every day. Well, the painting's assuming that finished quality. What I'm doing now is adding a bit more finality to the cars and buses and any public lighting. I want there to be some strong darks, nearly black. A few figures painted dark moving through the scene. They help to give a feeling of scale to the church as well as the cars. And here you see the finished piece. Nearly finished? Yeah, I believe it's finished. So look how it's dried. Some of those blues have paled, some remain, and the reds that we painted in the beginning, even in the sky, even though we put a strong blue into the sky, look at how the reds are coming through, the yellows coming through, the glare is very strongly felt. So a lot of the goals that I had in this work, I feel I realized, and so I'm very pleased. I hope this section on color and mood is helpful for your painting.